This is Donald Trump being interviewed by Chuck Todd for Meet the Press. And pretty much everything that he says scares the crap out of me, other than some of his conversation regarding the trade deals that he wants to basically either renegotiate or invalidate. Here's his interview.
Immigration and why he says he alone can fix the country's problems. But I began by asking him how it feels to be the Republican nominee for President of the United States.
Well, it really feels great. And we really have a very unified party, other than a very small group of people that frankly lost. And
yeah, and you have Ted Cruz to thank for that, because before Ted got out there and made an ass out of himself, you really had a really splintered party, but everybody got pissed off because Ted Cruz stuck to his guns and wouldn't endorse you. And I got to give you credit. You allowed the guy to speak. You knew what he was going to say, and you guys were betting that what happened was going to happen, i.e. people being pissed off that he didn't fall in line with the party and endorse you. So on that, that was a smart move on your part.
We have a very unified party. You saw that the other night with the love in the room and the enthusiasm in the room. The enthusiasm.
That wasn't enthusiasm. That was a third world mob mentality that was screaming, send her to jail, or something to that nature. And I mean, they were screaming it. And one guy went so far as to say that she should be put in front of a firing squad and shot. So again, you see that normally in third world countries where the opposition party, whichever party loses, their leaders and supporters end up either being put in jail or executed.
There are people that say they have never seen anything like what was going on in that room, especially Thursday night.
Well, let me tell you, bring up Thursday night. I got to ask you about your entrance before we get serious here. That Monday night entrance was something else. I know you've got a lot of feedback.
Well, I think I'm a little bit lucky, and a couple of people had that idea, and I went along with the idea, and everything just worked right. And it was so good that they wanted to do it on Thursday night. I said, never in a million years, because you'll never get it that way again.
I don't think I've seen that even on WWE.
Yeah, I know. Well, Vince is a good friend of mine. He called me. He said that was a very, very good entrance, but I didn't want to do it a second time because, it never works out the second time.
All right, let's go into the speech. I want to put some meat on the bones, but first let's talk about, you've seen some of the positive reviews, some of the negative reviews. Some of the negative has been, it was a little dark. There wasn't enough optimism in it. And what would you say? It's not morning in America.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, I think the only negativity, and I call them the haters, and that's fine, but the only negative reviews were a little dark. And the following day they had another attack. And then today you see what happened in Afghanistan with many, many people killed. They have no idea how many, so many killed. Yesterday it was Munich. And, I know they're saying maybe it wasn't terrorism, maybe it was just a crazy guy, but in the meantime, he's screaming Allah Akbar as he...
Okay, and I guess this was, he did this interview before the German police had their news conference, because they confirmed the guy wasn't screaming Allah Akbar. He was a xenophobe, and as a matter of fact, he was a right-wing xenophobe. That was against any kind of immigration. So that's not, the guy wasn't affiliated with ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of the groups out of the Middle East. He was more affiliated with white supremacist groups, basically out of Germany and Europe.
Shooting people, so, we'll see how that turns out. And all of a sudden people said maybe it wasn't dark at all. But the only thing that some people said, it was a little dark. It was a little bit tough.
Did you think it was a little dark?
No, I thought it was very optimistic.
Okay.
To me, it was an optimistic speech because...
What makes it optimistic?
Because we're going to solve the problems. We're going to solve the problems. In other words, sure, I talk about the problems, but we're going to solve the problems.
Yeah, but he didn't tell us how he was going to solve a single problem. So it was dark. It would have been light if he said, yeah, the world's going to hell, but this is how I'm going to fix it. I'm going to put a chicken in every pot, and a person, everybody's going to have their own homes. Okay. and we're going to build them based on, just lay out at least one solution to one problem. He never did that, not once, other than saying that he was going to support the law enforcement. And that's not a solution to a problem.
Phrases you use, I alone can fix it. And some people, that sounded almost too strongmanish for them.
Well, it sounded like a dictator. That's exactly what it sounded like. That's the thing about Chuck. He does these interviews, but he doesn't push like a Chris Wallace or a Chris Matthews. They really get in there and dig. He kind of skirts the issues and lets people get away.
Do you understand that criticism, and what do you make of it?
I'll tell you, part of it was I'm comparing myself to Hillary. And we know Hillary, and we look at her record. Her record has been a disaster. And I am running against Hillary. It's not like I'm running against the rest of the world. I know people that are very, very capable, that could do a very good job, but they could never get elected. I can tell you right now, I can give you 10 names of people that would do an extraordinary job, but there's no way they could ever get elected. They wouldn't know where to begin. It wouldn't be for them, but for governing, they'd be good.
But see, the problem is, if he had said, we, the Republican Party, can fix the problem, that would have been one thing. Because Hillary's not saying she can fix the problem alone. She's basically grouping up with the Democrats and saying it's going to take the Democrats to fix the problem. Now, she's full of shit too, but that's really where she's coming from. But he's always talking about I and speaking about himself as far as in the third person. And I never trust the person that refers to themselves in the third person.
I'm running and, against one person.
You said there would be consequences for any company that tried to move a factory down. What is the consequence?
So
Let's start with
simple.
you bring up Carrier a lot.
So
If you were
simple.
president, what would
Carrier's just an example.
explain? Right, I understand that, but explain the consequence.
Okay, here's the consequence.
What would it be?
So Carrier comes in, they announce they're moving to Mexico, they fire all their people in Indiana, and they say, hi, here we are, Mexico, enjoy your plant, enjoy the rest of your life, and you hire people from Mexico, okay? Now they make their product and they put it into the United States, where we will have a very strong border, by the way, but they put it into the United States and we don't charge them tax. There will be a tax to be paid. If they're going to fire all their people, move their plant to Mexico, build air conditioners, and think they're going to sell those air conditioners to the United States, there's going to be a tax.
What kind of tax are you thinking?
It could be 25%, could be 35%, could be 15%. I haven't determined. And it could be different for different companies. We have been working on trying to stop this government because we don't know what we're doing. And not only Obama, they've been trying to stop this from before Obama. But they don't know. They've tried low interest loans, they've tried zero interest loans. These companies,
some of these things aren't going to get through the World Trade Organization. There's a lot of these.
Then we're going to renegotiate or we're going to pull out.
So basically what he's saying is he is going to suspend the NAFTA agreement, because that's the only way that you're able to impose, no other way around it, tariffs. The NAFTA agreement killed all tariffs between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. In order to charge fees, fines, or add-ons, which are called tariffs, you have to kill the NAFTA agreement. So basically he's saying he's going to kill NAFTA.
These trade deals are a disaster, Chuck. The World Trade Organization is a disaster.
The concern
NAFTA
on
is a
some of this
disaster.
is that it would rattle the world economy. Look what Brexit did to the world economy. Investors got
What did
rattled.
it do? What did it do?
Now
The
you
stock
feel like
market's higher now than it was when it happened. And by the way,
What did it do? He's right as far as our stock market being as high or even higher than it was before Brexit occurred, but he fails to realize that the British currency is at the lowest level that it's been in like the last 30 years. If we turn around and do the same thing, our currency, the value of our currency would drop as well, okay? That would have a ripple effect, because with all the currency manipulators around the world, if our currency dropped, it would be a good thing only because our products would be able to be sold overseas and be in a much more competitive position. countries aren't stupid. If our currency dropped, okay, they would in turn revalue their currencies to lower the value of their own currencies so that the competitive balance would be restored, so that they in turn would be able to sell their products and not be in as great a disadvantaged position as they would be with our currency being lower. What does that mean? Basically, it means a giant trade war worldwide.
I'm the only one of all of these people at the higher level of the world of the wonderful world of politics. I'm the only one that said Brexit's going to happen. Remember, I was asked a question. I said, "Yeah, I think they're going to improve it. I think they want independence. I don't think they want people pouring into their country." And
You're not worried about it. You think a fractured Europe is good for America?
No, no. But we're spending a lot of money on Europe. Don't forget, Europe got together. Why primarily did they get together? So that they could beat the United States when it comes to making money. In other words, on trade.
An economic pressure.
Okay? And now we talk about Europe like so wonderful. Hey, I love Europe. I have property in Europe. I'm just saying, the reason that it got together was like a consortium so it could compete with the United States.
So what you're saying is all this stuff's good for America, even if it's not good for Europe?
Look, you take a look at Airbus. They make more planes now than Boeing. Okay? They got together, all of these countries got together so that they could beat the United States. Okay, so we're in competition. So, you know, we're in competition in one way, we're helping them in another way. It is so messed up.
The Muslim ban.
Okay, that's one thing about Trump. I mean, he may have a few ideas that I may not necessarily go along with, but as far as his view on trade, I can't really argue with him too much as far as how he wants to deal with trade, because these trade deficits, we can't continue to run them the way that we are. We need to be running positive trade balances with all these countries, and we need to kick the shit out of China, okay, and bring our manufacturing back from there. We also need to do something about the other Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries to bring our manufacturing over there. But my one major peeve is all of these mega companies, banks included, they all have these either Indian or Filipino service centers, so that when you call into a toll-free number, you're connected with either an Indian or a Filipino. Those people are making money. They might not be making tons of money, but they're making money. All of those service center jobs need to come back over to the United States. Those are perfect jobs for college students, okay, especially, you know, at night, manning those service centers. That in itself would help to boost our employment. And those jobs are not obviously the best paying jobs, but they pay, you know, enough that it would be worth our while, especially college students or, you know, housewives or people taking a second job to help supplement their income. Those jobs should not be in India or the Philippines. They should be right here. If it's an American, especially a major American bank, we need to create some kind of a law that all employment, all service centers must be located in the 50 United States, period. End of story.
I think you've pulled back from it, but you tell me.
We must immediately suspend immigration from any nation that has been compromised by terrorism until such time as proven vetting mechanisms have been put in place.
This feels like a slight rollback.
I don't think it's
Should we
rollback.
interpret it that as that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I actually don't think it's a pullback. In fact, you could say it's an expansion. I'm looking now at territories. People were so upset when I used the word Muslim. Oh, you can't use the word Muslim. Remember this. And I'm okay with that because I'm talking territory instead of Muslim. But just remember this. Our Constitution is great, but it doesn't necessarily give us the right to commit suicide, okay? Now, we have a religious, you know, everybody wants to be protected, and that's great, and that's a wonderful part of our Constitution. I view it differently. why are we committing suicide? Why are we doing that? But you know what? I live with our Constitution. I love our Constitution. I cherish our Constitution. We're making it territorial. We have nations, and we'll come out. I'm going to be coming out over the next few weeks with a number of the places, and it's very complex.
Well, I was
because
just
we
gonna
have
say-
problems in Germany, and we have problems
I
in
was just
France.
going to ask that.
You know, it's
So
not just
would
the
this
countries that you
limit
would think.
immigration from France?
What we're going to have is a thing called.
They've been compromised by terrorism.
They have totally been, and you know why? It's their own fault because they allowed people to come in their territory.
So you would toughen up. You're basically saying, hey,
You know,
French want to come over here, you got to go through an extra
it's
check.
their own fault because they've allowed people over years to come into their territory. And that's why Brexit happened, okay? Because the UK is saying, we're tired of this stuff. What's going on, we're tired of. But listen to
We
this.
could get to the point where you're not allowing a lot of people to come into this country
Well,
from a lot of
that.
places.
Maybe we get to that point. Chuck, look what's happening. Look at what just took place in Afghanistan, where they blow up a whole shopping center with people. They have no idea how many people are even killed. Happened today. So we have to be smart, and we have to be vigilant. We have to be strong. So we can't be the stupid
So
people.
France, Germany, Spain,
So here's my
places
term.
that have been compromised?
Here is what I want.
All right.
Extreme vetting. Tough word.
Yeah.
Extreme vetting.
What does that look
We
like?
have to have tough. We're going to have tough standards. And if a person
Give me one.
can't prove that they're from an area, and if a person can't prove what they have to be able to prove, they're not coming into this country. And I would stop the Syrian migration and the Syrian from coming into this country in 2 seconds. Hillary Clinton wants to take 550% more people coming in from that area than Barack Obama. I think she's crazy. I think she's crazy. We have no idea who these people are for the most part. And you know, because
You don't
I've seen them
worry.
on
All right.
I've seen them on different shows, but more importantly, I've read about it, I study it. There is no way that you can vet some of these people. There's no way. Law enforcement officials, I've had them in my office, I've talked to them.
You realize some of these folks have nowhere to go. They're truly victims of this civil war.
We
What do you do with them?
will help them, and we will build safe havens over in Syria, and we will get Gulf
We,
states.
the United States,
We,
we're gonna
the
build these safe
United
havens?
States, will get Gulf states to pay for it because we right now have.
There he goes again with getting doing something and getting somebody else to pay for it. That's a bunch of bullshit. Mexico's not paying for a wall, and you're not going to get a bunch of those Gulf states to pay for us to build safe zones. There's no way, how do you force them to pay for it? Then all of a sudden you turn around and tell them that, well, you're not going to provide defense anymore. Then something happens, okay? And the country gets overrun. Now all of a sudden you got an issue with oil. So goddamn well, you're not going to let those countries get overrun by anybody that's going to be quote unquote anti-US, and that includes Iran. Okay, so you got no leverage there, and that would be the only place that you would have leverage. And they got leverage over you because we are still exporting oil from them, and we do not want a disruption in the oil supplies coming from there. So, Mr. Trump, you have no grasp of the world economy and the supply lines as far as resources are concerned. You're not going to get the Gulf states to pay for safe zones. Forget it.
We're going to have $21 trillion very soon, trillion in debt. We will do safe havens and safe zones in Syria, and we will get nations that are so wealthy that are not doing anything. They're not doing much. They have nothing but money. And you know who I'm talking about, the Gulf states. And we will get them to pay for it. We would lead it. I don't want to pay because our country is going down the tubes. We owe too much money.
All right. Let me move to something with NATO. Mitch McConnell said this about your NATO remarks in the New York Times. He said it was a rookie mistake, and that once you, let me finish the comment here. It's a rookie mistake, and it proves that Trump needs people like us around to help steer him in the right direction on some basic things.
He's 100% wrong. Okay? He's 100% wrong. If he said that, I didn't hear you say that.
He did say it.
Okay, fine,
Okay.
fine.
New
If
York
he
Times.
said that, he's 100% wrong. And frankly, it's sad. We have NATO, and we have many countries that aren't paying for what they're supposed to be paying, which is already too little, but they're not paying anyway. And we're giving them a free ride, or we're giving them a ride where they owe us tremendous amounts of money, and they have the money, but they're not paying it. You know why? Because they think we're
So
stupid.
is there? So
No, no.
Estonia is paying. And if they get invaded by Russia, you're there?
I feel differently.
Okay.
I feel very differently.
But if a country's not doing, Britain hasn't done the 2%.
We have
Right,
countries, we take care of South Korea, we take care of Saudi Arabia, and we lose on everything. We lose on everything. If Mitch McConnell says that, then he's wrong. So all I'm saying is they have to pay. Now, a country gets invaded. They haven't paid. Everyone said, oh, but we have a treaty. Well, they have a treaty too. They're supposed to be paying. We have countries within NATO that are taking advantage of us. With me, I believe they're going to pay. And when they pay, I'm a big believer in NATO.
See, he's looking at NATO as though he's operating a standard business. NATO is not a standard business. And that also, what he's saying also goes against his statements about America's allies not being able to depend on us. But if you're turning around and telling people that you're not going to come to their defense if they haven't paid their 2% of their GNP for defense, that sends a mixed message. So it's either one or the other. Either they can depend on us or they can't depend on us. You're making it sound basically like we're mercenaries.
But if they don't pay, we don't have, you know, Chuck, this isn't 40 years ago. This isn't 50 years ago. It's not 30 years ago. We're a different country today. We're much weaker. Our military is depleted.
Why do they always say our military is depleted? We're spending more money now, this year, on our military than any year in the past. So if our military is depleted, whose fault is that? Because we're spending the money. We're spending the money. So either we're getting ripped off big time on all of the monies that we're spending on the military, because I believe last year the military budget was, I believe it was about $548 billion. This year it's up to, I believe it's $600 billion. So either we're, pissing money down the toilet big time, or the military is not depleted and you guys are just throwing that out there. Now, I know Republicans have never seen offensive or defensive weapon systems that they didn't have to have, but that's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, anytime something goes down, we're always shipping troops and materials here, there, and everywhere. We're putting, as a matter of fact, we just announced that we're putting a super advanced missile system into South Korea and Japan. Okay, that wasn't advertised. The South Korea one was advertised, but the missile defense system that we're putting in Japan wasn't advertised. Okay, so it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't wash that our military is like this dilapidated, super depleted military, and I'm not buying it, and I never have.
We owe tremendous amounts of money. We have to be reimbursed. We can no longer be the stupid country.
When we come back.
Now, this is commercial, so I'm just going to skip through this. Hang on one second.
I'm just going to literally throw out a name, and you'll know the question I'm asking. Bernie Sanders.
Great respect for what he's done. He is being taken advantage of, and frankly, the system was rigged, and I'm the first one to say it was rigged against him. And by the way,
you took after him. You took after him. He said for supporting Hillary Clinton. You think he needs a root?
Well, I'm not a fan of Bernie Sanders, but I am a fan of one thing that he talks about: trade. He's the only one on that side that understands trade. Now, he can't do anything about it because that's not his thing, but he has been gamed. It's a rigged system against him. And what happened with the choice of Tim Kaine was a slap in the face to Bernie Sanders and everybody. I was shocked. I love it from my standpoint. I love that.
Why do you love the Kaine pick?
Well, first of all, he took over $160,000 of gifts. And they said, well, they weren't really gifts. They were suits and trips and lots of different things, over 160.
Legal?
Bob McDonald.
Legal in the state of Virginia?
Legal. It was Bob McDonald. In the meantime, he had to go to the United States Supreme Court to get out of going to jail
Well, they proved quid pro
for
quo.
taking a fraction of what...
They proved quid pro quo on that one.
Excuse me. Bob McDonald took a fraction of what Kaine took. And I think, to me, it's a big problem. Now, how do you take all these gifts? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. The other thing about him, he's bought and owned by the banks. And the third thing, he's in favor of TPP and every other trade deal that he's ever looked at, and that means he wants people not to work. Now, he is going to change his tune. And I understand he's now going to say, I'm against TPP. Hillary Clinton was totally in favor of TPP, which is a job killer, right? So is he. When she watched me on your show and other shows, all of a sudden she changed because she knows she can't win that in a debate.
That's not true. Actually, it was Bernie Sanders that pushed her out of TPP. Just to clear the record.
All right. Ted Cruz, I'm going to amend it. Are you really going to fund a super PAC to help defeat him?
Well, it's not
See-
the number one thing on my mind. Look,
Okay.
See,
on my mind.
this is Donald Trump on payback. Anybody that's not for Trump is against him, and that's when he starts dragging them. So I don't believe he's going to contribute any money to anti-Cruz campaigns or anti-Kasich campaigns. But he talks a good game when he gets on these various shows.
Is beating Hillary Clinton. What's on my mind is winning for the Republican Party. With that being said, yeah, I'll probably do a super PAC, and when they run, against Kasich
Okay.
for $10 to $20 million,
All right.
against Ted Cruz,
All right.
and maybe one other person that I'm thinking about.
Who's that one other
I won't
person?
say that. I mean, he's actually such a small person, I hate to give him the publicity. But yes, so I will probably do that at the appropriate time, but I'm not going to do that until the
Oh, give me this.
All right, what kind of a dumbass runs a super PAC against a governor in their own party that is highly popular in a state that you gotta win in order to have any chance of becoming president? That's not just dumb, that's absolutely crazy. But, it's Donald Trump.
Small person.
No, don't worry about it. We'll give it to you another time.
All right.
That small person he's talking about is probably Jeff Flake out of Arizona.
Let me ask you about this one. David Duke announced his Senate candidacy, claiming your agenda for his own, or essentially saying, glad that you spoke out.
Are you ready before you ask the question?
Newt Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate this guy
I
no
did,
matter what it takes.
and I do. Are you ready?
Would you support a Democrat over David Duke if that was what was necessary to defeat him?
I guess depending on who the Democrat, but the answer would be yes.
Now, how can you say, I guess it would depend on who the Democrat would be, but the answer is yes? It can't be both ways. And let me say this. As much as he says that he repudiates these guys, he doesn't support these guys, he doesn't need the endorsement of these guys, all the white supremacists are coming out and saying they understand why he's got to say it, and they don't believe him. So if they don't believe him, why should we believe him? Donald Trump is a racist. He may be a closeted racist. He may be a camouflage racist, but he is a racist. Listen to the statements that he makes out of his own mouth. He made racial statements against Hispanics, Mexicans to be specific. He retweets white supremacist false information about black people, okay? He doesn't like, Islam is a religion, it's not a race, but he's made all kinds of disparaging comments about Muslims. He's a misogynist. He's made various derogatory comments about women. He's made derogatory comments about veterans. He's made derogatory comments about handicapped people. So he's an equal opportunity hater of everybody except white old men, period.
Look, the answer is as quick as you can say it. In fact, I want to answer you before you
Totally
answer the
get it.
question. Because last time, with another person in your position, I did it very quickly, and they said he didn't do it fast enough.
He didn't do it very quickly. The guy gave him 3 chances on repudiating David Duke, and he tried to lie and say he didn't even know who David Duke was, okay? And then he had to come back. I believe it was either the next day, I think it was even 2 days later, that he finally came out and said that he repudiated David Duke and I guess, various white supremacist groups. He's full of shit. He's lying, just like he always does.
Rebuked. Is that okay? Rebuked.
Rebuked.
Done.
Done.
Okay.
Tax returns. A lot of conspiracy theories are being out there about why what's in your tax return.
Let me
You
just
would get rid of all these conspiracy theories tomorrow.
Let me tell you.
How you make people look
Let me
silly.
give you a little lesson on tax return. First of all, you don't learn very much from a tax return. I put in to the...
That's bullshit. You learn a ton of stuff from a tax return if you have the complete tax return. Especially, you want to see exactly what someone's doing as far as charitable contributions. And based on the P&L in his type of tax returns, you can basically figure out what the guy's basic cash flow is. So you can get a lot of information from a tax return.
The Federal Elections Group, 100 and some odd pages of my financials. It showed, as you know, that I'm much wealthier than anybody even understood, okay? Tremendous cash, tremendous assets, tremendous all that stuff. Okay, that's it. I'm going through a routine audit, just a routine audit. And I've had it for, I think, 14 years, 13 years. For every year they audit me. It's routine go. I would never give my tax returns until the audit's finished. But I remember this. Mitt Romney, 4 years ago, was under tremendous pressure to give his tax return. And he held it and held it and held it, and he fought it, and he didn't do too well, okay? But he didn't do anything wrong on his taxes. When he gave his tax returns, people forget, not now, he gave them in September, before the election.
So you still might release
Wait a minute. When he did, and his tax returns are a tiny peanut compared to mine, they went through his tax returns, and they found one little sentence, there was nothing wrong, and they made him look bad. In fact, I think he lost his election because of that.
Because of the
They made him look bad for 2 things. One, his charitable contributions were very low, and number 2, his effective tax rate was super low. That's what made him look bad. So for you to say one tiny little thing, that's not true. And the other point I want to make is on Trump's tax returns, he can release the returns that have already been audited. So he's full of crap.
I think he lost, and I'll tell you why. He didn't do anything wrong. Mitt Romney did nothing wrong. But they would take out of his weren't too big. Did you ever see mine with the picture? They're like this high.
I've seen that picture,
okay.
yes.
So they took his tax return and they found a couple of little things, nothing wrong, just standard, and they made him look very bad, very unfair. But with all said, I'd love to give him, but I'm under audit. When the audit's finished, I'll give him.
Finally, Roger Ailes. Is he helping you? Is he advising you?
Well, I don't want to comment, but he's been a friend of mine for a long time.
And that tells you all you need to know, because Roger Ailes is a prick. And he got busted trying to lay all the females at Fox. And there's a reason why you see a ton of blondes, and they're all wearing short skirts, and most of the time they're exposing cleavage. It's because Roger Ailes issued an edict that any woman working at Fox better be walking around in a short skirt with her boobs exposed.
And I can tell you that some of the women that are complaining, I know how much he's helped them, and even recently, and when they write books that are fairly recently released, and they say wonderful things about him, and now all of a sudden they're saying these horrible things about him, it's very sad. Because he's a very good person. I've always found him to be just a very, very good person. And by the way, a very, very talented person. Look what he's done.
Yeah, just that he's a kindred spirit because he's a womanizer just like you. So birds of a feather want to flock together.
So I feel very badly. But a lot of people, I think he's going to run my campaign.
Yeah.
My campaign's doing pretty well.
Mr. Trump, until we...
Yeah, so much for the interview. But honestly, his campaign ain't doing bad. You know, that you don't want to lie and say he's tanking. His campaign he's right, is doing pretty well. So the Democrats, you better get up on your JOBs, because a couple of bad events, especially domestic terrorism here, and you might be looking at the next president of the United States.